Bye. Hi, everybody. Eimear Burke here. Welcome to another Fireside Chat. And this is Fireside Chat 169. And as is customary, I will start with a prayer for peace. Gamara Shiakon ar fud na crinne. Gamara Shiakon in our Jaili agus in our Jirha. Gunairi Lin Lenarkij Garmaka. Gamuj Buikas Jeev Jea Quivdaka, Spirit Quivdaka. May peace prevail on earth. May peace prevail in our homes and in our countries. May our missions be accomplished. We thank you, guardian spirits and guardian deities, for peace. As the fever of day calms towards twilight, may all that is strained in us come to ease. We pray for all who suffered violence today. May an unexpected serenity surprise them. For those who risk their lives each day for peace, may their hearts glimpse providence at the heart of history. That those who make riches from violence and war might hear in their dreams the cries of the lost. That we might see through our fear of each other a new vision to heal our fatal attraction to aggression. That those who enjoy the privilege of peace might not forget their tormented brothers and sisters. That the wolf might lie down with the lamb, that our swords be beaten into plowshares, and no hurt or harm be done anywhere along the Holy Mountain, with thanks to John O'Donoghue. So let me see where people are from. Canuck in Canada, Denmark, lovely. Wyoming, Belgium, Ballinakilaloo. Oh my God, look at these. Sherwood Forest, lovely. Sunny Gisborne, New Zealand. Well, we've had a blue sky today. Warmish by Irish standards, not bad at all. New York, lovely. Where else are people from? Kamloops, balmy, minus 15 degrees centigrade. Wow. Okay, that's cold. Just wonderful to see you all and to be back again after my slight break. And then there's Ulster, warm Australia, Pacific Northwest in the USA, Aberdeenshire. I'm not going to pronounce that. Bad Salzuflen in Germany. Forgive the Seaham or Seaham. New Brunswick in Canada, North London, Cornwall. Lovely to see you all. Wiltshire. Okay. Oh, Stuart, listening from Wiltshire, I've just joined your order. My first day training as a bardal. You're very, very welcome, Stuart. I wish you lots of magic and discoveries along the path. Inside Merlin's Closure. This is in Cornwall. Lovely. Winnipeg, frigid Winnipeg. Wickham in Hampshire. Just lovely all to see you all. So now, today, Maryland, we are going to go to Bath in the UK. And I'd like to welcome my guest this evening, Matt McCabe. So Matt, you're so welcome. This has been long overdue. But anyway, it's great to have you after all this time. So,
it's very nice to be here.
Great. So you tell us about Bath. You know, I've only been to Bath once. So close to Glastonbury, but I'm always so busy at gatherings that I've only been once. So tell us about your landscape.
Yes, we're famous for our Roman baths. Although I did raise with the curator at the Roman baths the fact that their tour guide begins with the Romans, and I said, wasn't this a really important site to the Celts? So important that they actually named their goddess after the waters. And they're looking to slightly readjust their tour guide if you ever come to Bath.
That's really interesting because I think it was 2011. I went there and I bought a plaque. It was a replica of a Celtic plaque of the triple goddess, the maiden, the mother, and the crone. And so I have that hanging in my crone temple. But I thought, it was really interesting that, this was so Celtic beforehand. And it's interesting how the what was it, the worldview or the culture of the colonist. It takes precedence, and then it's about having to go back and scratch the surface and to acknowledge what was there before, because obviously one culture builds on another. Sacred sites are built upon previous sacred sites and so on.
And it's interesting. I'm reading Ronald's book at the moment, Mistletoe and Blood or something, and there's this sort of up and down of when Druids were popular in the 1700s, but then there was a change, and then the Romans were popular in the 1800s, and of course, it's somewhere like Bath. The beginnings of archaeology were really in the 1800s. We moved from antiquarians to that sort of science of archaeology, and so the Romans are the impressive stone builders. But and one of the things that irritates me as a druid of Sul, who is my goddess, is that it's the Gorgons, the male head that was on the front of the temple is what you get on the merchandise, and the figurine of Sulis Minerva, you don't see that. There's nothing you can purchase, which is interesting.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. Wow. Get your activist hat on and out you go and sort that out.
Well,
are there any images
I'm trying.
Are there any images of Sul, or is she like a lot of our Irish goddesses? We don't have images. They're there in the landscape, but we don't actually have.
There is. There's a bust of Sulis Minerva. So the Romans equated Sul with Minerva, and I think in Latin they add the S so that they can conjunct the noun or whatever it is. So Sulis Minerva. But no, there is a bust, so you can come and see an image of the goddess, the tutelary goddess of these lands. So you said describe the landscape. Bath sits within sort of 7 hills, and the hot waters rise up in the middle, and the river flows through. And I'm on the south side of one of the southern hills, so I look out over hills, but behind me is the city of Bath. So brilliant. Gently undulating curves.
Interesting. You've 7 hills of Rome, and you've the 7 hills of Bath, and the first time I came across Bath, it was Jane Austen. It wasn't the Roman baths. It was reading Jane Austen, and I remember being so disappointed.
We got her. We got her 250th birthday activities this year.
Okay. I remember going to the pump rooms and going for afternoon tea, and so disappointed that I had a tea bag in the teapot and not loose leaf tea.
Well, I can mention that. So for people who don't know, I'm a local councillor, and believe it or not, I'm a cabinet member for the built environment, and that means I'm responsible for everything underground and the built environment. So where they take the hot water from the springs from slightly lower down and feed it into the pools and things, I'm responsible for all that. So I'm responsible for the waters of the goddess, which is nice for a druid.
Isn't it lovely to be a caretaker, the guardian of the waters? Brilliant. Of course, you brought me a few years ago. I have the bottle over there.
That's right.
Yes, and a beautiful glass bottle. Yeah. There's a bit of a delay.
It's slightly embarrassing that Yes, I'm sorry. I think that might be my end. Sorry about that. So, but the bottle was made in Bath, and but I still have we still. So we have a seed group, and I still have to sort of sneak in and sneak some water out from the from the baths to use ritually. I do point this out as well.
It's funny that the guardian of the waters has to steal some and doesn't have access. That's great. So I remember first meeting you was at a Druid Gorseth, I think in 2012, and I don't know, was it down in Oxfordshire? I think Liz Cruz was running it. So just tell us your story about how Oh, Liz Hill says Matt's a trickster. I wonder.
I don't know,
How
Liz.
oh, she might know you. Uh, how do you how did you find Obod? How did you find Druidry? What's your path up to there?
Well, this goes back to the 80s. And I mean, I'd fallen out of love with, well, I don't know, I loved Christianity, but it suddenly fell apart when I was about 15. And then I didn't have anything. And I graduated in 86 from film school. And whilst we could still use the cameras, we went down to Cornwall and filmed a chap called Hamish Miller, who some people will know from the book The Sun and the Serpent. And he was a dowser, and he took us up to the Merry Maiden Stone Circle, and we were filming him, and I just thought, blimey, I've been in education all my life and nobody's told me anything about this. So I think but then in the 80s it was a bit new agey, and it was, whatever book fell off the shelf, and whoever you met next was going to be, somebody important, in part important information. And I by the end of the 80s, I decided I was pagan. I was definitely a pagan of some sort. And what happened? I think I was discussing the elements and the quarters with somebody a chap called Chris Street, who was an author. And he said, oh, you might be interested in this lot. So this was the end of 89. And I sent off for the introductory pack, and I really thought, this is it. As you often hear people say, this is it. This is what I've been looking for. I think I've come home. I didn't quite have the courage to send off for the pack, but the beginning of 1990, I got a job in Newcastle, and being a Brighton boy and not really, understanding what was north of London, I took the job thinking it was between Birmingham and Nottingham. And of course, you're driving up. It's a long way to go. It's practically Scotland. So I just thought, well, I'll do that whilst I'm living up here. And then, of course, I spent 7 years on Tyneside. And so I learned my Druidry really in the landscape of Northumbria. I was a year in the Bardic grade. And that was very familiar to me. I just loved the Bardic grade. It was what I'd been doing up to that point. The Ovate grade, 2 years, it was a little more difficult and challenging because that going deeper and sort of working particularly with the goddess. And I think that was interesting and challenging. And then I entered the Druid grade, and I was asked if I'd be an Ovate tutor. I took on the mantle of the media rep for the order, and I was involved in running the Northumbrian Grove. And it's odd looking back now because back in the 90s, I felt I had a lot to say. And then, of course, things change and things happen, and so two of my tutees, this is before everyone was called mentors. Two of my tutees, of course, were Adrian and JJ. And now when I sort of meet people, as a West Country Druid, look at me. People sort of look at me and they're slightly disappointed that I'm not Adrian. It's or I'm not as druidic as JJ. It's one of those things where I've met some amazing people on this journey, and people who are sort of spiritual friends, lifetime friends, and it's been incredibly rewarding the last 35 years.
Well, Ferdy, it says those are Olympic sprint times for the first 2 grades. You did very quickly with the Bardic and the Ovate grades.
Yeah, I was 7 years in the Druid grade, but then I when I was at Tyne Tees Television, I got a job. There were so many tangents to go off on in the Druid grade, and then I got a job as a religious program maker, and I made we made a program about Aidan, Cuthbert and Bede, and Aidan was the Irish monk who'd come over from Iona to Lindisfarne and founded the monastery on Lindisfarne, and I just remember that studying his life and writing that story so resonated, and I was trying to get a sense of what it was about Celtic Christianity that was actually quite appealing. If you take the Jesus bit out, and something about Celtic Christianity was really appealing, and I think that's that's one of the things that had a profound effect on me. And so that 95, 96 was really quite an anchoring point in my Druidry, because I also came across Pelagius, who was branded a heretic in the early 400s. So Pelagius talked about free will, the fact that we could improve ourselves through small actions, and he fell foul. He was accused of resuscitating the ideas of the Druids. And at the Synod of Whitby, the Irish monks were criticised for a number of things, but one of the things they were criticised for was free liturgy. And of course, the Roman Church said, no, you can't make it up for the time, the place, and the people. You have to use these words. Here's the book. These are the words you must use. And I, when we do the ritual workshops, I always say, when you create ritual or ceremony as Druids, you're following a really, really ancient path, because that's what the Irish monks were criticised for as well in the 600s. So I think that sort of coming together, and I think there's a bit of that in Ronald's book as well, is that Druids come together to serve the community like that, and provide the ritual and the ceremony for the cycle of the seasons and those celebratory, celebrant type moments in people's lives.
Wonderful. Just as I love that. Of course, this is what OBOD does. Okay, everybody gets a book of ritual, but you're free to create the rite according to the people who are there and what's happening in the ceremony. And that's hugely important, that liturgy is not, cast in stone, that there's only one way to do. And I think it's one of the freedoms that we have.
Yeah, you're absolutely and Penny and I, when we've been doing the ritual, we often say, or repeatedly say, Druidry is about the time, the place, and the people. When you say, and the spirit of this circle, that's those people gathered there, and the spirit of that circle is those people in that moment, in the place, and the spirit of the place, and so everything kind of resonates in the words that we use. But once you understand the intent behind the words, I think you're free to do whatever you like. And it's odd being in that position of teaching ritual, but then running a grove, running a seed group. So we're quite new. We're only 2.5 years old in Bath, and really adhering to the words of the rituals and not deviating at all. I must learn the script.
It's interesting. Ferdy, it says nobody's garden grows the same every year, same year after year. So why should our rituals not emerge differently as well? And I know the ceremonies we have here, I have an eclectic grove. It's not just O-bodies, though since I've become chosen chief, more and more O-bodies come. But mine isn't. A lot of it's in Irish, and it's not necessarily a direct translation. Okay, the Druid's Prayer is a direct translation, but so I think you could recognize it as an O-bod, but not a. It's not strict.
The important thing is that the building the magical circle, that's a set magical formula that we follow, and then deconstructing it at the end. So we build the magical circle. Exactly. May the harmony of our circle be complete. And then we deconstruct it, and as we leave the space, we, may the harmony of our lands be complete. We put everything back as it was. But really, in the center, the central rite is that's whatever you want it to be, really. And I think, we talk about some of the tools and techniques in that we use in the ceremonies, like gateways. I'm a big fan of gateways. Give me a gateway to walk through, and I'm yay, straight. And I think one of the other great gifts that we have that we can give to each other is blessings. I mean, we are free. We don't need another priest to intervene on our behalf. We are free to bless. And we got to do the blessings, the Immolc blessing, who was absolutely brilliant, and it was really profound. First time they'd done it, kind of thing. And those are the moments that are really magical. Go, as a druid, go out and bless somebody tomorrow. It's in your gift to do so.
I remember doing so, just so that people know that you and Penny and Gary Llewellyn, you hold the Inner Journeying and Ritual weekends, and you're doing one in April and one in September, I think, in Glastonbury. Yeah. So who should they contact? Are you full up?
No, there's spaces. I mean, we do, yes, the art of meditation, inner journeying and ritual. I'm also doing it in the office at OBOD is probably the best place, or events, office at druidry.org, or events at druidry, or druid events. Hang on, I don't know. Safest one would be the office.
Okay,
it's listed in the Hearth, but I'm also doing one at the Linden Gathering in Germany first week in July, I think, the Linden Gathering. So I'm going to be doing that there, and also we're potentially doing our first level 2 in Germany in the autumn. So if anybody's on from Germany,
yes, Bianca is from Berlin. She's here.
Yeah, Bianca. So I think that, and that's how you draw in everything you're studying in the Bardic grade into your ritual practice, and that everything you're doing in the Bardic grade is very, very helpful for how you approach ritual. And the weekend workshop. So Glastonbury's a bit of a pilgrimage. Obviously, people like to go to Glastonbury, but we do them elsewhere.
Well, I remember doing those two, not with you and Penny, but with Kate and Barry Riley. And long before I attended a gathering in Glastonbury. And you were talking about loving gateways. And it was just so powerful that each of us imagined our own gateways as we were calling. And they've always stayed with me. And I found that those weekends, so I imagine yours are as good as theirs. I
hope so.
Really, of course it is. It really locked in what ceremony meant, what ritual meant, why you do this, why you do that, creating the cauldron, creating that container, that space. And then through the Irish language, I now know why we stay at the east and we go sunwise, and what Deishil means and what Tuathal means, which is the Irish words, and how casting and uncasting a circle, or opening and creating a circle and uncreating a circle, how they mean through the Irish language. And I find that fascinating. It makes it very, very rich. And that's what I think your weekends will do, which is kind of not cementing, but it may be that, for the want of a better word, what goes on in the Bardic grade, which is just beautiful.
Yeah. I know. And I did. I was just saying before we started, I've inherited another role, which is to run the Bard of Bath competition. It's not like I like to inflict poetry on people, but it's something that some people know. Tim Sebastian, who was the secular order, possibly in the early 90s. There was a bunch of them who re-established Bardic chairs in the West Country, particularly to reflect the Welsh nationalist effort and the Bardic chairs. And so there's been a Bard of Bath poetry or Bardic competitions, not always poetry, running since about 96, 97. But of course, being the secular order, they came with big fancy titles. So I think I've inherited the title, the Chief Druid of the Gorseth of Caer Badon, which is funny because it's not something we It's not something we do in OBOD, go for big fancy titles, but there we go.
So in this, indeed we don't. So in this competition, are these people who just live in the Somerset area, or can people from outside come in and take part?
It's essentially in and around Bath. So the current winner lives just outside in Bradford on Avon, which is very close. So does a lot in Bath. So it's very much the Bath. I think there's still a Bardic chair in Glastonbury. I think there's possibly one in Exeter. But we're looking to see how we can expand it this year, I think, and sort of widen it out a bit, because that'd be nice.
So when the Bard wins the prize, do they get a chair like the Welsh do?
They do. Well, they get the remains of a chair because somebody left it outside. So the back of the chair still exists, and it's beautifully embroidered. But the bottom, the sitting part of the chair, rotted and disintegrated or something. So one of my tasks, I guess, at some point is to find somebody who can rebuild the chair. Or maybe that's one of the things I should look at in terms of all the things I also need to do running a small farm and being a counsellor, is actually learn how to make a chair. I don't think you're ever too old to learn these skills.
No, absolutely not. So it's a perpetual chair.
Yeah, so the back of the chair has an area where previous winners are all listed. The chair gets passed on, and there's a robe as well that gets passed on to each winner.
Well, with the Eisteddfod in Wales, they create a new chair for the Bard, and the Bard takes it away. And if they have not managed to elect a Bard, meaning if the submissions haven't reached a certain standard, they don't keep that chair for next year. They burn it. That is how serious it is.
It's interesting. One of our members has 2 Bardic chairs in his studio because his grandfather or great uncle won them twice, and kept the chairs. But I don't know if you ever. He worked with Simon Emerson. If any people remember Simon, who died a couple of 18 months or so ago, he worked with Simon on the music for Lush. So if you ever go into Lush, the shop, some of the incidental music is written by the inheritor of some Bardic chairs, so Richard. So and he's absolutely lovely and comes to our C group. So
I know Simon Emerson was involved in because I have the soaps. I bought them. I ordered them. And I keep forgetting to take them out of the top, because I want to say I'm not taking them out in between. So I hope I remember for the equinox coming up to take out the bar of soap and put it at the sink. And then it was Jamie Reed's art. So who's the guy that holds the two chairs?
Richard Evans. So he, I think Simon came up just before he died and introduced me to Richard. And Richard lives in Bath and has his studio in Bath. And I think they created the music that Lush use. And somebody bought me a Lush spa treatment, which was lovely. And some of the music was definitely by Simon and Richard.
Oh, beautiful! Stuart, who's just joined. I think did he join OBOD today? Started on the Bardic Raid. He lives in Bradford and Avon near Bath, and would like to join your
really.
group.
Oh, fantastic! Well, it's listed on the hearth, so that'd be great. We got two other people who live in Bradford on Avon, so one's came for the first time on Saturday, so last Saturday. Was that Imolk? It was last Saturday, only last Saturday, yes.
Our Imolk here is on Sunday because I was away. So anyway.
Yes. How was the storytelling in Marrakesh?
Oh, it was brilliant. We had about 103 international tellers, over 30 Moroccan tellers, and this is the big brag. Now, I only had a small part to play in this. We broke the Guinness World Record for continuous storytelling.
Brilliant, fantastic. Oh, wow.
So we were telling for 94 hours, but we got accredited for 80 hours and 30 something minutes. And so uh, so I was staying in the Medina, the old city in Marrakesh, and in the middle is the Jamal Fana. It's a big, big square. And there was a 1,000-year-old history of storytelling, and it was dying out.
Oh,
So the old storytellers were dying out. And a guy called Richard Hamilton, he works for the World Service, the BBC World Service. He was the North African correspondent. And in 2013, he published a book called The Last Storytellers of Marrakesh, where he had gone around collecting over a number of years the stories from the old tellers. And it was like, this is dying down. I'm just preserving the stories because there are no young tellers coming up. But then in 2022, they reclaimed the Jamal Fana as a storytelling square. And it is a UNESCO, the UNESCO Intangible World Heritage Site for storytelling.
oh, right. Intangible assets of value or something, isn't it? No, yes. Brilliant.
So it's storytelling like the Irish harp and football or hurling or something. We have it. And I don't know what you have in the UK that's intangible. But and now there are young Moroccan tellers, young men and women, and there's a school of storytelling in Marrakesh, and it's just and there's a World Storytelling Cafe, and so I'm going to be telling online tomorrow for children online. We many of the tellers that have been to Marrakesh, we take turns. So every Friday at 6 p.m. UK time. At the World Storytelling Cafe, we tell stories.
Wow, that's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Absolutely.
There's something else I could try.
And yes, indeed. Why not? And I'm going to start, now that I'm here, I'm going to alternate my chats with heart sessions of a show of storytelling. So I think we're starting the first one on the Hearth on the 20th. I haven't this is the first time I'm saying it. I've got Heidi McNee is going to do it with me. So why not? And we went to schools. So the festival was really busy because all the tellers had to go out to, I don't know, 200 schools. And Moroccan adolescents, well, the ones that live in Marrakesh are absolute dreams. There wasn't an eye roller. There wasn't a cool kid. I go into schools here in Ireland. I know what secondary school kids are like, and I've had two of them. And these kids were just so engaged with the stories and came up and said, "Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. We loved your stories." And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to live here. I'm going to immerse myself with these wonderful kids. And no strict discipline. I just assume it's the same though in the UK, where there's roll calls and you have to make sure the child can't leave the school and everything is defensive. That kind of protection. Where this is easy, OZ, and you would expect much stricter. But I mean, I've been in Tanzania and Kenya where schools are strict, but here and there in North Africa and Morocco, just an easy relationship between the students and the teachers. It was just a joy.
How lovely! How lovely! And did you take your harp with you?
Oh, I didn't. If they would pay, I had to pay my own seat, my flight. No, it's too big, and I haven't got a travel case. You get these big. Awkward travel cases. I would love to. So just telling, not just telling, it was just such fun, and meeting other tellers from all over the world. There was North America, Canada, South America, India, Australia, Singapore, Hong Kong, everywhere, Turkey, Ireland. Just brilliant. Just a brilliant thing. And storytelling just brings people together because I suppose there's no culture that doesn't have storytelling as part of it. And even so, I mean, and it's still there and still alive, even though we have cinema, because obviously cinema is all about storytelling in a different format. But anytime I'm anywhere and I ask, does anyone want a story? People say yes. They don't go, oh no, who wants a story? Show us a film. There's still that childlike desire to hear a story. Go on.
Of the stories you were listening to, you couldn't have listened to everybody's story, but of the stories you were listening to, was there any particular favourite that stood out? Some other story from a different country that caught your imagination?
Well, there's a beautiful. She's of Indian ancestry, born in Singapore, lives in Australia. Dee, I don't want to make a mess of her name. She was telling. Well, I'm going to just get her name here because do you know what? It's Palanisamy. And she is a brilliant teller. She's very funny, but she specializes in our erotic goddess stories from the Indian tradition.
Oh, wow.
Just brilliant. And a lot of stories are universal. So people will tell, you'll have maybe the Cinderella story or the Red Riding Hood story. And you go, oh, that's a Chinese version of what we have, and that different cultures have similar themes, which I always find fascinating.
Mm.
And of course, then telling where, so in the schools, you're kind of telling more, ones with a nice, not quite a moral in them, but something that has a little bit of wisdom. And then other situations, you might be telling funny stories, or I suppose mine are a lot of the mythic ones, but then I have to say, well, will this go down well in this context? Is this what people can hear? And those kind of things. So, and there's a whole range.
Wow.
And then, I was at a Moth and Butterfly Festival at the weekend in Galway, and Moth style of story, it came from the US. It's telling personal stories. And Butterfly is about improvisation, and then the body of the butterfly is the mythic and the traditional stories like the ones I tell. And it's just wonderful blend of different genre of storytelling. And Ricky says, I love that there are communities with storytelling for adults rather than treating it like something you should grow out of. We need playtime for adults to be normalized too. Ricky, you are one big child, and I know, incredibly playful, and I agree with you. Stories, I mean, now it's becoming with the corporate world, they're going, oh, everybody loves a story, and how do you use a story to sell your business? And I'm not particularly interested in using story to sell my business or to manipulate people, but stories call to you. What you want to do is embody a story, and then hopefully that connects with your audience, and they see themselves in that story. I was doing one online for the Weaving Remembrance course last week, and I told the Sive story. And this is why am I telling you the talking? Where are we? I'm meant to be interviewing you, and I'm doing all the talking. I've noticed. Anyway, since I've started, like Magnuson, I shall continue. I was talking about the Sive story, which was the mother of Usheen. So in the text, we know Sive is a deer. Finn McCool finds her, and she turns into a woman, and they fall in love, and then she gets pregnant, and then she disappears again. And that's all you hear about the story, about her. And it's like, hold on a second. She's a really, really important character, and nobody's ever bothered to write about her. So I've told her story because I know the truth. Gone into the other world and met her and all of that, of course. But anyway, for me, it ends. It's about grief, and grief's the price, being the price you pay for love. So that has been my understanding, because that's how I end it. However, there's a bad guy in there. There's the Far Duraka, the sorcerer, who turns her into the deer. And so this discussion started around, well, maybe, you have the malevolent one can kickstart you in to some kind of initiatory process, and you discover your true self, which is great. But then others picked in, particularly from the US, about malevolence and how not to let the malevolent one into your head, and how to protect yourself. And it was really interesting how stories, when people find themselves, that was not my intention, but I thought this is really, really rich. People, depending on the time and the place they're hearing the story, pick things that you may not have intended. And those resonances are, I think, are fascinating. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm sure that's more interesting than anything I've got to say.
No. Oh, Andrew Anderson, Andrew, our editor of Touchstone. Facts don't change the world, stories
yes,
can. Yeah. My story are always true. They just don't necessarily contain facts.
From the other point of view is never let the facts get in the way of a good story.
Absolutely. I'm all for that. Absolutely. Yeah. Anyway, so back to you. I remember you talking in the town hall, actually, in the good old days, about your community work as Druid in community. And I think it might be interesting for people to hear about how you, I suppose, practice your Druid, even though you don't look like Gandalf, and you could work in your image a bit more. There's a few
I know. I can sneak up on people, though. That's the thing. They're least suspecting. I guess it started. I think as soon as you put down roots, and Philip's book, The Druid Way, about finding the sacred in your own community instead of trolling across different countries to look for the sacred. And I think that it was maybe about that time or just after that we got the opportunity to do a community project around our recreation ground behind us. And I just thought, do you know what? I'm going to go and work with the spirit of place. I'm going to go out there. Okay, I might look a bit crazy, but I'm going to sit there and I'm going to commune with the spirit of the place and see what comes out of it, because we're going to create change. And I don't want the place fighting the change, because we think what we're doing, our intention is to improve things. And I think I did that, and then all sorts of really interesting bits and pieces fell into our laps, and it's one of those things whereby, because it's interesting, in fact, as you talk about storytelling, we could suddenly tell the story of what was Belmont Recreation Ground. The story was that it was part of the Great Tottenham Forest, and it was the last bit of the forest, maybe along with Downhills Park, but it was the last bit of the forest, and it had been held on by the Lord, whoever, as a hawking grounds. And sure enough, one of the approach roads was called Hawk Park Road, and it was the hawking park for the Lord. And it was left, but of course, what there wasn't was any trees left, because they'd all long gone. So we set about planting trees and hedgerow and dealing with antisocial behaviour by bringing more people in, so that there weren't corners which were nice, safe drink and drug taking places. We put a path around the outside so that people were walking. So there were no more. So we dealt with the antisocial behaviour by bringing people in, and that was sort of the beginning of that sort of doing things for the local community. And so we did a lot of projects then after the success of that. And then we moved down here, and I planted a heritage apple orchard. I think that being of service, I think, thing that comes up later on, being of service to your community, for me, that is about getting active in the community, doing projects, and now as a local councillor, as a representing people. But behind my bar, so I have my heritage apple orchard. Sort of completely by chance, we've started juicing and bottling all the apples for all the old orchards around Bath. So there is now somewhere for the produce to go. So that's that hub has been created that's done that. And then behind the barn, we now have a community tree nursery. And in fact, on Saturday we're lifting, and we've got about 700 trees that we've grown. So there's a volunteer group who come in. They've picked seeds and nuts from the local hedgerows and the woodlands. And they've been germinated. The council helps to germinate, and we're clearing out, and then all the little babies will come in once all the beds are cleared. So it's that being of service to one's community, I think, plus the finding the divine in your own community, in your own landscape, is really, really important, I think. And what was the book that Philip put together? A book, a thoughts, I don't know, for the 50th or whatever it was, and he asked me to write something about my landscape, and I was saying for me, because my landscape, so my drive is 2 banks and a ditch from when they refortified the hill when the Romans left. So that's how I go in and out every day. I've got an abandoned medieval village in the field, and under my barn there's all these abandoned houses. The last time we had a big plague, and there's so much history that okay, I've planted a heritage apple orchard which may last 100 years of being productive, but that's like maybe a paragraph in the story of Barrowmead. At best a chapter, but more like a paragraph in a chapter of, and that's sort of how for me it's how do I tell my story in the landscape, and for me it's about what I plant where, and whether we can restore the field in front of us as meadow with our neighbours. All the trees that are grown on the land, they go out into communities. So that's kind of, I don't know if that is going to be my legacy. I don't know. That'd be really nice if it was, though.
Well, it's most impressive for you who are very busy. I mean, a counsellor, a tree person, a spring guardian,
poetry, yeah.
Yes. And then you've got kids, you've got a whole life. It's just it's impressive. I mean, what a legacy to have planted an orchard. And then it's the seeds. So how long from the time you put the seed in the pot? How long does it take for that to germinate? Because obviously it'll depend, because seeds won't germinate this year and they may next year type of thing. From that point to the time you give them to somebody to plant out, how long does that take?
I think the seeds are picked. They germinated over winter at the council nurseries, and then they come out for planting the following November. And so there's some babies waiting to come in. So this weekend we're lifting. We've got about 8 beds, and we can get in about 700 trees. So they will be. So they're about that big, I guess. After a year in the council nurseries, and so we grow them on to 1 or 2 year old whips. Probably 1 year old whips mostly. So we grow on, and it's one of those things where I think Druids should be active and I was when lockdown happened, we lost a climate conference in Bath and North East Somerset. And so I said to the organizer, my colleague, why don't we go online and invite some of the people who were going to be giving presentations to come in and just chat to us? And one of the people was a chap called Adam Gretton, who runs an outfit called More Trees for Bath and North East Somerset. And he the conversation they had was, wouldn't it be great if people were interested in growing trees as well as planting trees? So they could always get volunteers to come and plant some trees, but could they get volunteers to come in and sort of look after baby trees and grow them on and bring them forward? And he said, what I need is landowners and volunteer groups, because I think we can provide all the rest. And I said, would you like to come and look at the piece of land behind my barn? So that's where it started. I think that there was the model of it was from possibly down near Exeter somewhere. And but anyway, mine was the first. And then I had this stream of people coming in to see it, and off they went. And now there's 19 around the city that are, and they sort of, they're at one point, and then they look out and deliver trees out that way, and then the next one does it over there, and they do it over there. So that the baby trees are all locally sourced. There's a word for that.
Ricky calls you a tree person, an honorary ent. Can you see that?
Yes, I can. Yes, an honorary ent. Well, I hope the trees appreciate it. I mean, we were talking about apples the other day, and they said, "What's your favourite apple?" And I said, "Well, depends on the season, and depends on what's gone well in the spring. You know how the trees coped with the frosts, the late frosts." But I said, last year the best juice we had was Ashmead's kernel mixed with a bit of summer russet or golden russet. But I said this year, best ever apple juice, and it was Lord Hindlip. And I've never had both. I got two Lord Hindlips, never had them produce so much fruit. We juiced it all, and it was it's like nectar, So it's every year is different.
Wow.
It's just a joy every year to see what happens.
Wonderful. So Owen
An orchard
says,
is not planted for 1 month. Yeah,
one mouth alone.
but for
But for the songs of children yet to dance beneath its boughs. Wow. Who says that, Owen? Is that your own? This Owen's quite poetic, so I don't know if it's his own. Wonderful. And then from Andrew, fantastic line by Felix Dennis. Whomsoever plants a tree winks at immortality. That is brilliant. Just wonderful.
So it's one of those things. I've just had a hiatus over the last 2 weeks because my dad died, and he lived in the south of France. But and he's been slowly disappearing over the last 2 years from cancer. But I took some seeds from the cypress, one of those tall, thin ones that grow in the med. I took a couple of cones from that. I've done it before, and I've done it again, and I've actually grown 12 little fir trees from seed, and so I'm busy planting the baby trees in my garden to sort of act as a memory.
That is beautiful.
That was one of the things he liked. So yeah.
Oh, I've well, you've seen my garden. So when I first came here, it was just a field. There is no more room for me to plant a tree.
Your garden is so full. It's extraordinary. Do you need us to do a bit of work in it again?
Yes, I do. Because my gardener is no longer coming, so you may not be able to see me above the tall grass by the time you come. So, but I mean, it's a combination of, well, it's a wild garden with a labyrinth that needs to be maintained, but the rest of it is wild. Yeah. So that quote that Owen says says a poet, Chrissy Donahue, a woman whose wisdom was counted as a tree, she'd be amongst the tallest of the oaks. That's beautiful, Owen. Just that one about an apple tree is not for one mouth.
That's lovely. That's lovely, isn't it?
Sorry, go on. I cut across you there.
I was gonna the other thing. There was one other thing I sort of wanted to sort of touch on, and that was the politics, because I know, Philip, and you come under pressure for OBOD to be making statements about this, that, and the other, and I think you and Philip have always been right that OBOD should not step into the political arena. But I think it's really important. I think I exchanged with somebody on the half about getting involved in politics. Politics isn't for everybody, but community activism is, and we can each make such a difference. I've got because I'm a grower, but I'm also in charge of planning. I get people talking to me about how do we do growing, and there's a campaign group about growing local food, and talking about food resilience, and I'm sort of now in the position where I can ask officers to put something about community growing space into our planning documents and make an impact like that. So you don't have to be the politician in that, but if you're the active community champion, then you get to find who are the politicians, who does want to make change and create change. And I think that's it. It's kind of teamwork. because the other thing is there's a lot of my friends in OBOD are sort of who are politically active are obviously Green Party members, and I'm a Liberal Democrat, and it's kind of like, why aren't you a Green? And I said, well, let's not talk about politics, political colours. Let's talk about what we want to achieve. And then suddenly you find, you do have that commonality in what you'd like to achieve, and when you're talking about improving people's lives, it's quite difficult when you're talking to, because obviously I have to go out and talk to residents, but and a lot of people are angry and upset. You're
okay. What?
Have I reappeared? Something just happened then. That's
okay, you're still on my screen.
So,
it's the
okay.
interesting thing about when we're talking about activism or politics or whatever it is, it's to recognize the goals that we have in common. Where people fall down, conflict is the means by which those goals are achieved. So you say some members are Green people and you're a Lib Dem, and then people can fall out over, sorry, you're in the wrong party and I don't like what that party stands for. It's like, well, that's not what the issue is what are we trying to achieve? And this is why in any team or in any community, often the row is not about what you want to achieve, but how we're going to do it. And it's that importance to remind us of, and this is what we do in OBOD, is like, what are our shared values? Because when you think of the diversity, on so many planes within the order, be it spirituality, religion, gender, blah, 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 whatever it is, nationality, ancestry, all of that stuff. It's that, and because we don't hold, and theism and animism and etc., that it's our common values that are important, not the means by which we carry out or act on those values.
Yeah, and I think when you live somewhere like Bath, and I go into the Guildhall, I pass rows and rows of photos and portraits of old beardy men who have run the city, and it's only in the last, you get to the colour photos, and somewhere sort of maybe the 60s and 70s, you see the first female, and it's kind of like that. That's a reminder of how actually diverse representation is such a privilege and a gift, and it's not something that we've enjoyed as a country, especially as most of Bath's wealth was generated by the slave trade. It's it's the slave trade or the hot waters. That's the thing about Bath. The great bon viveurs of the 1700s, who led all the parties at the assembly rooms that Jane Austen liked to visit, all made their money out of the slave trade, and that's something we have to acknowledge. But
yes,
now we're just trying to make money out of the waters again.
Well,
and
you see,
the Roman remains.
Yes. And I suppose if something as wonderful as the baths that have been created, how they can be used now in a maybe a more fairer system, a more socialist way, or how the benefits can be spread out to the community rather than just for some wealthy people, as has happened in the past.
The big sadness is you can't bathe in the waters.
I know.
They discovered that there's a brain-eating amoeba that lives that unfortunately thrives just at the surface where the waters come up, which is why we now take the waters from lower down. But the last time somebody jumped into the waters in the 1970s, and the water has to shoot up your with great force for this amoeba to be able to get to the right place and then eat its way through into your brain. But anyway, because of that, one poor lady died from swimming in the waters in the 70s, and nobody's been allowed to swim since, which is a shame. And maybe the Romans had it right in that you should descend into the waters gently and slowly. But that is a shame. That is a shame.
Yeah. I wonder when the amoeba came. Was it always there? But like you say, if they descended gently into rather than diving in, and then they wouldn't have noticed. Who knows?
Yeah. And that is exactly the case. If you get in gently, there's not enough force for the water to get up into the bit between your nose and your brain. So it's a shame. It's a shame, but it's safety, which is why they get very sensitive about little druids popping in and filling up their bottles with with the water and say, oh, you can't drink that. No, I'm not going to drink it. I'm going to use it ritually in ceremony. I'm going to sprinkle it around my circle. Oh, okay. I'll pretend I didn't see. Okay.
Oh, wow, wow, wow. Brilliant, brilliant. So, what else are we going to talk about? I mean, this is fascinating. Actually, we've been talking for an hour. Can you believe that?
We have. You did ask me if I had any poetry, and I couldn't because I'd just come in from a whole day of meetings. I couldn't find my poetry book, but I have found what I wrote. I think this was my first trip to Iona in May 1992. So,
No.
and you know that thing of oh, I don't know if you had that thing of so I went up to Northumberland and I was studying this, and then I thought, oh, right, I've got to pluck up the courage and meet another druid. And so I went out and I met this small hairy gay druid, and that was unexpected. And then I met other druids, male and female druids. And then there was that trip, the first trip to another grove, the Northern Grove at Pendle in Lancashire, and it's kind of like I had that moment of in the car driving there one night, going, "Do I really know these people?" And your imagination goes away with you, and so then very quickly I found I was setting off to Iona to go on retreat with all these strange people, and so it was Philip was sort of leading them with Carish, and this is what I wrote. This is a poem what I wrote. Iona, as the rain lashes and the storm rages, I am severed from my world. I am severed even from time. I reach out from this crushing isolation, from this twisting turmoil. My hands reach up, grasping for support. My soul cries out, its temple shattered, and you, my teacher, you offer me a mirror.
Oh,
and
wow.
that was how that was how I always summed up Philip, because he always kind of like turned things around and said, well, what do you think that meant? So that was Iona, and it was the first time, or maybe 2 or 3 times I've been, it's been stormy, and of course then you feel that severed from your normal world on an island with people that you don't necessarily know, and it's quite nice when you're all cowering from the pouring rain, but when it gets dark, so there's that. And then of course everyone turns out to be absolutely lovely, and it's been a joy. It really has been a joy, and I don't know what happens next, but I'm really looking forward to 2 trips to Germany. So much so that I'm on Duolingo learning some German.
Oh.
I don't know if I'll be able to impress anybody.
Very good. I just loved Iona, and it takes a long time to get there.
Yes.
From here, because we have to cross 3 bodies of water. So if I drive up to Belfast, get it over, and then there's over to mainland Scotland, and then there's Oban down onto Mull, and then and then down through Mull, and then Finnefort over to Iona. I mean, it's certainly a pilgrim place,
Yeah, you never fancied doing it in a coracle like Columba.
Well, I have thought of that now that you ask. But the thing what he did is he threw it away. He didn't leave. He said, well, the funny thing is, when the story goes that they pushed the coracles back out and said, I'm never leaving. We'll never leave the island. But he also said he'd never because he left in disgrace, he'd never put his feet on Irish soil again. But he did come back. But what he did is, in order to keep his promise, he put sods under his shoes so that his feet never touched Irish soil.
Gosh, the lengths people will go to. I mean, there was one of the things about Aidan actually that I really liked was Aidan walked everywhere. So he walked from Iona to Lindisfarne, and there was no suggestion of a donkey or a horse or anything. But then his ministry to the people of Northumbria was always on foot. But he used to ask the question, "What is it you believe in?" And he did that because he was never sure whether he'd meet a Celt who was been Christian for longer than the Anglo-Saxons, or whether they'd meet an Anglo-Saxon who'd been Christian but now had lapsed because whatever, there'd been change. So he used to ask, "What is it you believe in?" And I've always thought that in fact Druidry asks the same question. What is it you believe in? And we have the Gwers or the Gwersi, and we throw experiences at people, and whoever you are, whatever the background, whatever your life you lead, you pick up those Gwersi and you take that and you take those prods and you have those experiences and you look at your responses and you answer that question, what is it I believe in? And I think that's another ancient kind of thing, that ability to ask that question, because it changes as your life changes. What you believe in changes, I think, yeah.
And it's
so
interesting.
I think I was going to say, I think I know less now than I did at the end of the 90s. I'm not sure what I believe in at all.
I think there's something really healthy in that, because I was brought up as a Roman Catholic, and the funny thing is a bit of a contradiction here. So you have to be baptized because you come from sin and that needs to be absolved. But then I'm told I was born a Catholic. You can't be born a Catholic; you have to be baptized into one. So these and then there's set beliefs, and you must believe. And this is what's so healthy about, particularly Obod. I can't speak for any other Druid orders, other Druid schools or colleges or teachings, is what do you believe? And this may fit you now and it may not fit. And then, of course, we don't talk about beliefs. These are experiences or meditations you might like to try. And here's a concept that you can engage with and try and cut your teeth in. And it may irritate the hell out of you if you don't believe in hell. And then you make sense of that for you. And I think that's what's really, really rich. Even if it's, the one, I think it was verse 28, where what are the masculine characteristics and the feminine characteristics? And you have to do, I've mentioned in blooper, but anyway, you're talking about gender. I remember as a psychology student, the characteristics of a healthy adult were those of a male, and the characteristics of an unhealthy adult were those of a female. And so you can get really annoyed at that. And I think it's a really good exercise because you can unpack it for yourself and make sense of it. So when somebody presents you with, okay, here's a way of looking at the world, what do you think about this? And you then crunch it and engage with it and you wrestle with it. And then you decide what it is for you, rather than, because we don't set anything in stone in terms of beliefs. And again, there's that fluidity about beliefs. There's certain things I have held to be true for me, and now I'm not so sure. And it's that ability to be able to flow with concepts and ideas, I think, is really, really healthy, rather than being fundamentally stuck on a particular way of viewing the world.
Yeah. When I was, back in the 90s, when I was the media rep, and I handed over to Adrian in 2004. But on the run up to 2000, there was all that questing about what does it mean, and I got a lot of media stuff that either Philip would do it or I would do it, and I quickly realised I needed a phrase that I could just respond to because the journalists would often say, well, have you sacrificed any virgins recently? It's like that was kind of the level, that was the entry point for the conversation. And so what's a druid then? That was the next one. And the phrase I started using was, Druidry is about exploring your faith in the natural world. And from that phrase, I could control what happened next in the conversation. So Druidry is about exploring your faith. And as I say, we throw experiences at people through the Guernsey, and the natural world is kind of like your textbook. So you're interacting with it, you're studying it, you're listening to it. So it's almost the entirety of the lesson, other than the sort of the instructions from the Guernsey. And I found that was quite a useful way into some of these conversations. If you want to explore your faith, you can. If you want to find out what it is you believe in, you can, and Druidry is probably that's the solution for you. Of course, being Druids, people go, oh no, it's all about being green, and it's all about the bardic arts or whatever, depending on. But actually, that is, from that initial statement, what is Druidry? What are druids? It was a useful way into those conversations to an audience that didn't really know what Druidry was back in the 90s. So I don't know if you have you come up with an easier phrase?
My one is, it's a nature-based spiritual path where we look to the landscape and a season as a metaphor for our lives, and we do that by following the wheel of the year. And then people say, but isn't that made up? And I said, it is made up in the 50s, but whatever it is our mythology tells us about what we would call the fire festivals. And the landscape tells us about the solar festivals. And isn't this a wonderful synthesis of our Celtic and our pre-Celtic ancestors and how they come together? And then when
I was going to say, I think Ronald's book would suggest that it's been being made up since the 1850s. So, which is great.
Don't mind where. I mean, who's to say Moses did hear God up at the top of the mountain? He just came down and said, "Listen, I've got these 10 commandments." Everything is made up in a sense. When you talk about revealed religions, and then when people go on with what about all that human sacrifice that ye Druids do and did, blah blah blah, and I go, well, we don't know for sure if that actually happened. There were kind of maybe biased accounts. However, that's not the issue. We should be looking at the human sacrifice that happens in the modern world that's actually sanctioned by governments. And it's called collateral damage.
Yes. Yeah.
It's easy to look at those over there, but when we actually look at what governments are doing and colluding with. Yeah. So, yes. And Ferdy, it says everything is made up at some point. Well, indeed, but
indeed, yeah. And I think that is one of the sort of slightly painful realizations from Ronald's book is there's a chance that there may only have been about 20 odd druids that anyone could have just been the druid in the moment, and then everything else has been made up by people writing about the druids. But from Caesar onwards, everyone was just writing Caesar was writing to justify an invasion. I was stunned at the efforts they went to in the 1700s after the revival to try and tie Druidry to the Old Testament. The Old Testament was written history. That was the history of the world. And so how did Druids fit in? Oh, they obviously heard the message from the Jewish forefathers, and they got a bit lost. But they came back to it in the end. It's like, wow, actually, things have really changed.
Yeah, it's funny. What is it? Gabrielle says, Chris Hughes says that the one thing the modern Druid lacks in other people's perceptions is fear. I'm not sure I understand what that means, but
that's an interesting point. Fear of what? Fear of the dark. fear of, the other thing I would always say is, we are, it's in, when you look at what happened at the end of the 1800s, when those druids some of those druids started to try and worship in a pagan way. They started trying to invoke gods, pagan gods, up to that point, everyone, the antiquarians and whatever, they were all part of the church, and they absolutely slammed. There's some Welsh guy who started trying to invoke gods, and they all closed ranks and they shut him out completely. And it's the liberal democracies that emerged after the Second World War that have allowed us to express a pagan druid tradition. And I think we're tremendously lucky that this has arisen. And we've got lots of people to thank. We've got those pioneers. We've got feminist theology, feminist Wicca from the States. We've got so much to be grateful for. And yet it goes back to the cycle of the seasons. Is a much more sensible way to live your life. And I've lived a life, and I've been in business, and I've been in the civil service, and I've been in television, and that demand to be constantly productive every day. The natural world is not like that. We have seasons, and we need the dark time. We need time where we can't do because it's so cold, but we can think and imagine and plan, and we're in that space now in the Northern Hemisphere. And I'm a big so the theft of Mabon, and using poor old Mabon as a title for the autumn equinox is gets my goat. And I wrote in Touchstone about what we might have lost. So things like I love things like that. So it motivates me to stay involved. I think that, and the ritual workshops. I love the ritual workshops.
Of course you do. I'd love to attend them, but like time. But the thing is, you said when you were 15 or maybe a few years later, identified as pagan. As being brought up Roman Catholic in Ireland, pagan was just a terrible word. And even when I joined the order, I was not comfortable because it was so heavily loaded here. Either it meant you didn't go to Mass on Sunday, you believed in nothing, or, and paradoxically, you worship false gods, too many of them. So you get this mixed message. And then as I, went along within the order, I began to become more comfortable with the word pagan. So I'm pagan and I'm not pagan. I'm not locked into it. And I suppose I taught in a seminary for 27 years, and I've never, ever hidden the fact that I'm a druid. And
I've lost sound. I've lost you. Oh, is there a chat function? You're muted. It's on my screen. It says you're muted.
Yeah, I unmuted myself, and I did it a second time. Okay, and I was sharing something really, really profound. I've forgotten what
I thought you were. I could tell by your gestures that it was very profound.
What was I saying? About the pagan word. And
yes.
In Ireland, it's a great place to be a druid now, because if you just, when I say it, people go, "Oh yeah, I remember." Who taught me about the druids? The nuns in primary school.
Yeah,
that's where I heard about them. And so I heard all the stories, and of course they always called to me, and I would kind of tingle with the magic of it, never ever thinking that I would be a druid, or this was even possible, because I didn't know anybody like that. But when it's really interesting. So when I joined the order and I came out in my family, my siblings, most of them are Catholics, were all happy. My mother not. And I remember the day the announcement was made in the town hall, Philip and I had I'm losing myself. I'm back. Where Philip and I had prepared emails to send to people who'd need to know as soon as the announcement was made in the town hall. And so I sent one to all of my siblings and my mother. And my siblings contacted me immediately to congratulate me, even the Catholics, teasing me a little bit. And my mother couldn't. But 2 years later, she was with my sister at the handover, the installation ceremony. She was blown away because she'd
Oh,
actually heard the
yeah.
ceremony. And it's, so she'd say, "Oh, I saw you online." And I said, "Which one was it?" "Oh, I don't know. It was about nature. It was lovely. Your hair was nice." And but
Oh, that's good.
she's actually hearing, she's not talking about devils and horns and God knows whatever people imagine that druids do. That it's very, very
Mm,
hard to argue with calling on the spirits in nature. Now, people may say, "Well, you didn't invoke Jesus and you didn't invoke Mary." That's fine. But the other stuff in any of the ceremonies, and I've done, I'm a celebrant of pagan weddings, and people come up to me and say, "Wow, that was just beautiful. I'd love to do that again if I was ever doing this again." Because um,
mm,
because of the beauty of the ceremony. Creating a circle. I always say, why do we do ceremonies in circle? This is for weddings. We're creating a cauldron of love. So here we are, the gathered people. And I say, I assume you've only invited people you want here, because, you talk about wedding lists and having to drag out somebody out of a closet because your parents went to their daughter's wedding or something. But you have people that you want there. We create a cauldron
yeah.
of love and put her inside. And I've experienced that when Howard and I celebrated our 10th anniversary. And it was just so beautiful. And we coined this phrase, myself and himself, this cauldron
Yeah.
of love.
Wow.
And that's what a circle is. And people go, I get that. I get on calling nature. And
Yeah.
then, you'll find that, and many of our viewers, you're facing the east and you're calling in the gateway to the east, blah, blah, blah. And then suddenly the birds burst into song, or a buzzard passed by. People go, "Did you see that?" And these may not be druids at all. And they're going,
Mm,
"Wow." Or you're in the going to the south and a spark hops out of the fire or something like this. That all this magic happens
mm.
and people go, "Actually, this isn't bad."
Yeah.
There's a huge beauty
Yeah.
to it.
It's interesting. It's interesting. Uh, just with my father's obviously been part of what's been going on, but so it turns out that my father and his siblings were originally baptized Catholic. So
Okay.
Michael Fannin McCabe was an Irish Catholic, and the kids were all baptized into the Catholic Church. But he and his brother both volunteered to go and fight in the Second World War. They both volunteered. So I think they were either too old or they had reserved occupations. They didn't need to go, and they both volunteered, and off they went. My grandmother was so angry that she had all the kids rebaptized Church of England. I'm like, wow, what an odd thing to do to express your dissatisfaction at something. But what that eventually meant was, through my father's life, when he decided to get married again, much later, after it separated from my mum a long time, and then eventually decided to get married again. They found a nice little chapel, and they went to the priest to say, "Can you do a blessing?" And he said, "Well," he's going, "Sure, tell me about yourself now." And it was, well, originally I was baptized Catholic, and then he said, "Oh, well, we don't really recognize them, so as far as we're concerned, you'd never married, so you can get married in the church here." And so they did. So my father got to get
Oh,
married in a church the second time around, but this time as a Roman Catholic.
oh, brilliant,
Very
brilliant,
funny.
brilliant.
And what's really odd about my dad, you know Doreen Valiente,
Yep.
the great witch of the 50s and 60s. My dad was her lawyer. So
Go away.
she lived in Brighton, and when she had when she had the run-in with the guy from Essex or wherever it was, he was her lawyer, and he tells the story. He used to tell the story of driving back out from his office in Shoreham back out to where we lived in Ashurst in Sussex, and the brakes went on his car, and he was able to just let it slow down, and he got off the road okay. Anyway, and so Doreen heard about it, and she said, right, I'll make sure it doesn't happen again. And she made him a little charm which he hung from his rear view mirror for many years.
Go away.
And there you go.
Story.
Yeah,
what a lovely story.
He was able to do that because he was Church of England at the time. he was a lapsed Catholic at the time.
Oh God! And then he unlapsed. Oh, that is brilliant. We're coming to the end of our time, and I was just thinking, one concern you have about the world today. One.
What
concerns you most? What concerns you most?
I think the rise of fascist theocracy. I think because we'll get stamped out, we'll get the old convert or die thing, or get beaten up. That's what worries me the most. That maybe, and global warming. And I think the thing that is that the only question you're going to ask? Is that where we end?
No, I'm not. I'm going to ask you. What gives you hope in the end? Okay.
Oh, what gives me hope? What gives me hope? Well, what gives me hope? We had two Americans come over and stay in our holiday cottage, and they were absolutely Trump supporters. And I thought, as a Liberal Democrat. But we got on. We just talked to each other, and we had that commonality of family, really important to all of us: family, community, the environment, that sort of thing. We had more in common than the foul language that our politicians use, and I think that gives me hope in the world. And I think and that sort of, I don't know, is that Celtic hospitality thing of opening up your home and inviting people in. And I think that's why we have a holiday cottage, I guess, because we live in such a beautiful spot that we open it up, and we love having people come and stay here. We earn money from it, obviously, but it's such a beautiful spot, and people come from all over the world, and they love it too. And then it doesn't really matter what you express amongst your peers with peer pressure. What matters is you can stand where we have the sitting area for our guests, and you can look at that view and go, oh wow, you live in a lovely spot. Suddenly we have commonality.
I think that is really important, and I think that one thing is that we have to be able to see the points that connect us, particularly when there's so many diverse viewpoints from ours. I remember I used to do this when I was teaching at third level. There's an exercise from Joanna Macy, where in her book, Coming Back to Ourselves, she co-wrote it with Molly Brown. I don't know if you've come across Joanna Macy, well worth looking her up. And you get people to talk, you get people into groups. You have to talk about a topic from your point of view. So you want to talk about planting apple trees in your community. And then you have to talk from the perspective of somebody who doesn't agree with you doing that. And then you talk from the perspective of a non-human being who's affected by this decision. And then you talk about from the perspective of somebody from the future who's going to be affected by this decision that you're going to do something. And I remember, you get people say, I can't get into the opposite one. I said, do it. It's a really important place to be, is to stand in that other person's shoes that you can't stand to be in. See, because if you can have one little glimpse into what is behind that, is it their fear? Is it blah, blah, blah? So that you actually see them as a human being, an ensouled being. Do you remember, were you at Gordon the Toad's?
Yeah.
When he told me we're all ensouled beings. We eat ensouled beings, and the ensouled beings we eat feed the unsouled beings that are feeding off us inside our bodies. And it's all that great web. And it's to be able to recognize each other as an ensouled being. It's not easy. And I know from reading the comments here, there's some jokey comments about certain people who shall remain nameless, And how do you ever, how can you see the insoledness in that person? And, you know, the big actors and the big players in the world at the moment are acting out of huge trauma. What they have an insatiable hunger for power and money, and it's never enough. No matter what they have, what they do, they have this. And I have a story to tell about that, and I'm not going to tell it now, but it's that it's never, ever enough. And then they act out of that. They are really, really damaged people in pain. And as a result, they're inflicting so much pain and injustice and hardship and trauma on other people. So I'm not justifying anything they do, but unless we look to the other side at some point, we are not going to, we're always going to be hating each other. It's a hard one. And I think for those who are being hurt, it's very hard for them. But for the rest of us who are not in that raw place, maybe we can look and see it. Like if somebody's bombing my house, I'm not thinking, oh, these are unsouled beings and they've suffered childhood trauma. I must understand that. I'm screeching and roaring, trying to defend myself. But for the others who are not caught in that immediate painful place, maybe they can hold that space for me in my immediate trauma. I don't know. But fighting fire with fire is not going to, it's not going to work. You know, bigger guns and bigger bullies, because that's what essentially
you're so wise, Eimear.
I can't help myself.
Good. There's oh yeah, I can't even think what I was going to say now. I'm overcome with the wisdom of the moment. That's the other thing is there's the beauty of the world, but there's our ability to laugh at ourselves. I think that's the other thing that's really good. So hopefully, I've just realised. I'm so sorry, everybody. I've just realised I can see the comments as well by just clicking on the word comments. So I can see they're all flooding in. But I do hope I'll see some people. What do we got? We've got the Fires of Ishnuk. We've got hope maybe see some of you there. We've got the Obod Summer Gathering. Hopefully see some of you there. There's the Linden Gathering. Hopefully see some of you there. So let's meet up and give each other a hug this year.
There's a question from Hannah. As a druid, do you become intelligent and wise, or was the intelligence there to start? I'll let you answer.
I'm sure I was more intelligent when I was younger. I don't know what's happened. I'm sure I had lots to say about druidry when I was younger, and now I'm much happier listening to other people talk. So there we go.
I think that's the wisdom. The intelligent bit me, maybe the smart arse. You know, I know things, I know lots of facts, and I can argue, which is great. And I think the wisdom, Shashi, who's talking a lot, is about actually I'm not needing to say as much, you know. But anyway, Matt, it's been such a joy talking to you, and I look forward to seeing you again. Are you not going to any of the Druid Gorsets, are you?
Oh, I am.
Which one?
Yes, I am. I think I'm going to Cornwall.
Okay, I'll see you there.
But I'll see you there because we've run out of money because I had to get so many kids to the south of France for my dad's funeral. We've completely run out of money. So I couldn't go to both. I wanted to go to both, but we got the ritual workshop in April, so I have to keep some powder dry. I'll see you in Cornwall. That's next month, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. So I'm going to send you to the green room in a minute because we'll just look at the comments before I finish. Will you just say goodbye to everybody?
Yeah. I hope I'm surprised there's a lot of you still here. Thank you for your time this evening. And what a great way to end a Thursday. I now have to go and put the recycling out though. That's the only catch.
Okay. Mine was last week. Anyway, listen, thank you so much. I'm going to send you to the green room and I'll just chat to you in a minute and I'll just say goodbye to everybody here. So anyway, thank you all. I mean, there was so many wonderful comments. I could have been reading all those comments and not listening to Matt was that struggle, because there was so much going on here, and it's lovely to have such an active community listening in. You've noticed I didn't go to the hearth, and I'm not going to do that from now on, but every second week I'll hold a fireside chat, although I will be here next week chatting to somebody, and then I'm going to have a storytelling circle every 2 weeks ish on the hearth if anyone wants to join. So it's been really lovely to have your comments, and I look forward to seeing you next week. I will be here with Fireside Chat for next week, but going forward, it won't be on the hearth. It's just a little bit cumbersome and seems to break the conversation, etc. So I look forward to, and we have our Obod online Imulk ceremony this Saturday at 7 p.m. UK time. Hopefully you can join us then. So have a great evening, afternoon or morning, or if you're listening to a recording of this chat. And Banachthi Imulk Dív Shigalair, blessings for Imulk to you all. Until we meet again, Slán go fóill.